I the only one that's seeing you really dark, Joe?
I don't know. Others got to tell me.
Oh, there you go. That's a little bit more lightness.
Okay.
Great. It looks like we're live streaming now.
Yes.
Yeah. Gunalchéesh, how everyone? Just to start off really quickly, we are hoping that we've troubleshooted all the issues, but we thank you in advance for your patience as we host this coffee time today with all of our amazing and beautiful guests from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and around Alaska. And we're going to be making sure to be watchful of the comments that come through as well. New Zealand, and around Alaska. Just really want to say Gunalchéesh hawa for all of you taking time with us this Sunday to connect, to hear how things are going with our family down in Aotearoa, and also around the state of Alaska as we talk about the pandemic, how our people are responding, how we're doing, and then also, you know, what do we want out of this whole situation? What do we want to come to make our futures brighter for our peoples across our Indigenous world? So welcome everyone to this beautiful, I'm here at home in Gwich'in, this beautiful blustery Sunday. And in Aotearoa, it's Monday, about 11 in the morning in New Zealand. So I just really want to say thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Ayyu so she could say a few words of welcome as well.
Yes. Kuyanaqpak, thank you so much. We've been really looking forward to this time, getting to spend time with our whānau, both within Alaska and down in Aotearoa. I personally have been so blessed to be connected to so many of these amazing people, and they have truly, truly transformed my life, and in really amazing ways. And so I'm super excited for the conversation that we're going to be having. I'm excited to hear about what's happening with our families and our communities all over Alaska, as well as down in Aotearoa, and also for the both fun and inspiring conversation that we'll have about what all is possible in this time right now. So I wanted to begin, of course, by acknowledging the lands that I'm on personally right now. And as I do that, you also thinking of the Indigenous peoples of whose land you're on right now as well. I am currently zooming in from Iñupiaq, which is also known as Anchorage, Alaska. And in this space, because we're calling from all over our native world right now, we also wanted to claim this virtual space as unceded Indigenous territory for our conversation. So lift up the Indigenous people of whose land, not only of those of us on this call, but also those tuning in. So Quyanaqpak, we're really excited for our conversation. I'll hand it back.
Gunalchéesh, Charala'is, good people, Nunquai Gai Gitkianan Sinodi Non Kiagan. Nunquai Gai Gitkianan was my grandmother, Mona Jackson. She was from Haida and Heidelberg, Alaska. Gunahake Hinudi Chan Kiagan. Gunahake was my grandfather. Haslagadagan, he was Tlingit, and he is from my home here in Gwich'in, Kake, Alaska, K-A-K-E. I know our Maori brothers and sisters and Hawaiian brothers and sisters might pronounce that kake, but we say cake. Stathkawas Hinudi Aukiong. Stathkawas is my mother. She's a weaver. She's currently in Juneau, Alaska right now, in the land of the Aquan people and Takuquan people. Bill Cheney Hinudi Khadkiang. Bill Cheney is my father, and he makes his home here in our community of Gwich'in. Lagunai Hinudi Khadkilti Kiang. Lagunai is my Haida name, my Khadkil name. Gatsakas Kusudu Kolagan, and I am Eagle. Chich Gitne Hiine Udi'ijang. I'm Gwich'in is the clan I am from, the name of my clan. And I've had the opportunity to work for First Alaskans Institute now for about 11 years. I'm in the process of learning both my languages. I'm also Tlingit, and my Tlingit name is Qassataq, and I'm a Raven Kachari, freshwater mark sockeye salmon, and I'm here at home in my village right now in Southeast Alaska. It's an honor to be able to be with all of you, to spend time with all of you, to hear your thoughts about what's happening in our world and where we're going. First Alaskans Institute started hosting coffee times a while ago, where we would invite people to come in and sit down and have some coffee and snacks and just have a good, robust conversation about the things that we need to be thinking about and doing and preparing for as Indigenous peoples. And the shift to the virtual space has allowed us to kind of adapt that coffee time to our current situation. And we really thank each and every one of you for responding to our invitation and for being willing to have this conversation with us on a Sunday afternoon here in Alaska. And again, it's Monday morning in Aotearoa. So I'll hand it over to Ayyu so she could formally introduce herself. And then we're going to invite each of our guests to also do the same. So Ayyu.
Kuyanaqpak. Uvluluataq. Good afternoon. Ayyu Qassataq. I am Ayyu Qassataq. Gunalchéesh. I come from Gunalchéesh, also known as Iñupiaq. And Apaka Dalaluk Mupanyak Qassataq. My grandparents were Stanton and Irene Ketchtag. Amayuqaq Doug, Lucidatkun Kutkuk Herdman. My parents are Doug and Vernita Herdman. Kituqaq Kutukluk, Lutulaluk, Baniga Kanigluk, Nukakliga Inuatiurak. I have 4 beautiful children, Kutukluk, Dalaluk, Kanigluk, and Inuatiurak. And I have had the blessing of working with First Alaskans Institute for the last 10 years, coming up on my 10-year anniversary. And I currently serve as the Vice President and Indigenous Operations Director. Quyanaqpak. I'll ask, let's see, President Peterson, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning to our family, where it's Monday. My name is Gunalchéesh. I'm Kagwantan at the Eagle's Nest House by way of Kasan, my dad's village, and he's adopted Frog and Nungan. And very pleased to be here. I'm the president of Tlingit and Haida. There's 229 tribes in Alaska, and we're the largest and oldest by federal recognition.
Gunalchéesh. Wahlagidak.
Hadaga-ish, good people. Atlant-ish, ashti, gudinai lagang. It's an honor to be with you today. Wasal Girak Hinudik, Wasal Girak is my name. Barbara Blake, Yaatsatai Hinudik, Barbara Blake is my English name. I am Yak Janas from Heidelberg. I am a Raven from the Shark House. I am also the granddaughter of Tleanedi from Coak and the daughter of the Nelchina from Chestuchina. So my family is Haida, Tlingit, and Ana. It's an honor to be with all of you. I am hailing from Quyen or Juneau, Alaska today, originally from Prince of Wales Island, similar to President Peterson. And I look forward to our conversation.
Kahukura.
Kahukura yichat duasak take wedi aychat kwashka kwan yadi aychat yaktat kwan aychat. My Tlingit name is Kahukura. My English name is Joe. I'm downtown in our capital city, which is the land of the Kwan and Taku Kwan in Juneau here. My family's from Yakutat. Grandparents on my dad's side are Galucia and Annie Nelson. They're from Eyak Village. And my mother's side, it's Martha and Hans Totland from Yakutat. And my office here is in the Sea Alaska building, chair of the Sea Alaska board at the moment, and happy to be claiming this virtual space with you. So Gunalchéesh.
Gunalchéesh. Auntie Lear.
Ban Gwinzi, everyone. Good morning, or Drin Gwinzi. Good afternoon. Shojrik Jessica Oji, Gwich'in, Gwatsan Isli, Gatanan Gwich'in. Hello, my name is Jessica. I am from Gwich'in, Fort Yukon, and I live in Tanan, which is the Gwich'in word for Fairbanks. This is the home of the China Hultani, the Lower Tanana Athabascans, and I have a little girl who may jump in the picture with us today. She's just very curious about what I'm doing, running away from her in the house. But good to see everybody.
Masik. Now we'll go across the Pacific Ocean that connects us to Kate and Bentham.
Tuatahitanga ka mea ke nei rā tō tātou matanui te rangi. Whakahonore anō ki tō tātou kingi tu heitia. Me ngā mihi ki runga I ngā mate o Aotearoa o tira Alaska o tira te motu whānui o tira te ao whānui. Mai rā, o ki mai ki a tātou te hungore e tau nei. Kua whakarau I ka tea nei ki runga I tēnei o ngā rorohiko nei. Tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora whānau, my name is Bentham Ohia. My mother is from the top of the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the tribes of Ngati and Te Atiawa. And my father is from Tauranga Moana, the tribes of Ngati Ngati Pukenga, and also from the Aotearoa tribes also. So privileged to have come over to meet you before, and look forward to potentially some ongoing coffees, some huis, some zuis. The Māori word for meeting is hui, so we call these zuis, Zoom hui. Kia ora.
E tuku ana tēnei reo aroha kia koutou I whakawhiti ana te moana nui a kiwa I tēnei wā I rungi ngā hau. Kia koutou katoa I te whānau Alaska. I'm repping today. Yay! Ko Kate Cherrington tōku ingoa. My name is Kate and my people are from Ngati Hiine, Te Kaputai, Aotearoa in the far north of the North Island. My mother is Pākehā, Scottish, English, Irish descent, and I was raised at the bottom of the South Island. And I just support what Bentham said. You know, this is an awesome space to claim for us today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Kia ora rā.
Lee Craig and then Jeremy.
Kia ora tātou e hui hui mai nei, e tautoko ngā mihi kua mihia, kia tātou e hui hui mai nei. Ko Leanne Muntz tōku ingoa, no ngā iwi o Waikato, me Ngāti Ranginui hoki. Kia ora everybody, good morning everyone. It's wonderful to be in this space and lovely to see your faces as well. So my name is Leanne Muntz and I was born in Australia. My dad on my father's side is from Australia with Scottish and German Polish ancestry. And on my mother's side, I'm from, where Bentham's from also, Tauranga Moana, Ngati Ranginui. One of my communities, the marae over there is Bethlehem with the Ngati Hangarau people. And here in Kirikiriroa or Hamilton, where we live, I'm from the Waikato tribe, Ngati Koroki Kahukura. So we have two marae, two communities, Pohara and Maungatautari. We have 4 children and 3 of them are currently with us at the moment. We've got 2 little houses side by side. So half goes on one side and half stays on this side. And then we share the cooking duties and then the education duties. We've got our grandson staying here with us as well. So yeah, we've got a nice little hub and space here. So kia ora.
Atamarie Nisayandra. Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Muntz, and my mother hails from one of those little gems in between our nations in Te Moana Nui o Kiwa, the Pacific Ocean, i.e. the Fiji Islands. And my father is from the bottom of the South Island, where Kate has a lot of whanaunga from, a lot of kaimoana, a lot of seafood down there. So hopefully when we get out of lockdown, one of the first things I'd love to do is actually reconnect to our waters and to our seas and the salt and the rivers. At the moment here in the Waikato, we've got a lockdown, obviously, we can't go anywhere, but there's also a rahui, which is a restriction being placed on accessing the Waikato River. And that rahui was placed by the Māori king, Kingi Tuheitia. So that's quite a unique and a positive outcome, I think, from this whole experience, and that a cultural value like that has been instigated and has drawn a lot of awareness amongst the broader community in particular. And I'm sure Bentham and Kate will talk some more about some of the other things that have been going on here locally. Lovely to join this Zui, and thankful that New Zealand has probably one of the best fiber networks in the world. So we've got 5G throughout most of the country, I think, or 4G, and this fiber network. And it's only in this instance where we've had this pandemic and lockdown where that infrastructure, that investment in that infrastructure has really paid big dividends for New Zealand in particular. Kia ora.
So just for our Alaskan whānau, we had planned for you to come over later this year. Both Leanne and Craig were the ones who were organising your itinerary and planning your visit when you were looking to come over later this year. So we just postponed it for a little while. We're now going to go to Jeremy, who's me and Jeremy are very close brothers. Kia ora, Jeremy.
Kia ora, Bentham. Kia ora tātou te whānau. Hello to you all as family. We all look like whānau, to be honest. I look at everyone and go, oh, we're all related. So kia ora koutou. Ko Jeremy tōku ingoa, ko Jeremy tūmona tōku ingoa. The name tūmona comes from a proverb, te toko tūmona, which is to stand against the ocean, to be steadfast. And tried my best to bring that value into my life and that whakatauki into my life. Currently, it's with my daughter in the war against materialism. So that's the main thing we do right now. But kia ora koutou. I hail from the east coast of the North Island. So I was born in Gisborne, Te Tairāwhiti, which is Ngati Porou, Te Aitanga Mahaki, Ngāriki, Kaiputahi, Hoki Iwi. And also the namesake for my whānau tūmoana comes from Tūhoi. So that's my iwi affiliation. So kia ora tātou.
Wow, Gunalchéesh, thank you all so much. What a beautiful way for us all to greet one another, to hear our beautiful languages from across Alaska and Aotearoa. The connection to our ocean is something that is the spiritual essence of our being, and the waters that flow throughout our lands. And one of the things that has been really critical to our work is the need to continue to strengthen the relationships across the sea with our whānau. So just wanted to ask if anyone wanted to share some reflections on the importance of that connection. Are you folks there? Okay, great.
I think that one of the things that we've spoken of over the years is that there is that saying about the ocean divide. And for us, it's the highway that connects us and has been for many, 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 many generations. And we have stories of collecting resources amongst each other over many, 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 many generations. So wood and resources collected up your ways to hull out waka, the fact that we are a migratory peoples across the Pacific, and the fact that today we can land and be with one another and have been physically for the last, I don't know how many years now. Liz, we've been very conscious of making those connections, sharing knowledge, and beginning to have that exchange. It's an Indigenous exchange, whether it be marketplace of knowledge, you know, and in time there'll be whakapapa genealogy, I'm sure, as what happens when we reach out to one another. I guess that's one of the things we can talk about over coffee. But that's, you know, that's the reflection I have, is that this isn't new. It's KNEW. It's old and new knowledge for us that we're just exploring together.
Gunalchéesh. Richard.
Yeah, I think when we connect, you know, it was like the first time meeting Bentham. It was like we had known each other forever. That's that connection that we all have. This last winter, I went over on vacation with family to Hawaii, and we were invited up to Mauna Kea. And that instant connection and knowing that we have that history, it's not anything we have to explain to each other. There are a lot of Hollies there, so they explained to them, but we knew. One of the cool things, and I'm glad Joe's on, is See Alaska, our corporation, gosh, what, 20, 30 years ago, Joe gifted the trees. And, you know, that was something that we could talk about and connect on, and we were family. And I think it's those connections, and Kate said it so well, the ocean doesn't divide us. That's our highway. That's what brought us together for centuries. And so I know we were really excited about this trip coming up here, but we know it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. We know that it'll happen, but we're very excited to make those reconnections and to be able to learn from each other the way our ancestors did, you know, so long ago. And I feel like an obligation for us to pick that back up and make sure that we're doing that. And I'm always so grateful to Liz and all of our family at First Alaskans who have been really kind of stoking those embers. But I think it's up for all of us now to pick that up and to make sure that we're doing that. And so in not being able to make this physical trip this year, it's amazing. And I like what Ayyu said, we're going to claim this space for our own unceded digital territory and keep those connections going. So I'm really excited. Gunalchéesh Hawa.
Kakugu.
I had to switch you to the gallery mode to get everybody's face on my screen here. And this connection, you know, it's always so natural because we're naturally a collectivist people. And our issues come up when we aren't having the intent and pursuing the intent to regularly connect and be in touch. And this opportunity we're seizing right now, I think, is powerful because it's something that we probably wouldn't have done but for the fact that we all had to slow down in this moment. And the world is really doing, hopefully, you know, some of this right now as well. Cherrington, our president, mentioned the trees that went to the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and Nainoa had a presentation on Friday that some of you might have tuned into. And, you know, something that stood out from his talk there, and it was one of these global things online. It was the Ocean Elders. I'm a busy person. I'm always multitasking. And you know, so that's why I came into the office today, actually, because I've got kids at home. I've got to be cooking. I got to be doing everything. And I was like, well, I got to get out of the house to put my attention right here, because just the power that's coming here today to this is something that is not power in the sense of a Western sense. It's a different type of power and energy that we're bringing to this. And as Native people, we've traveled long and far for all throughout our histories. And we got to do it thoughtfully and safely. And the quote or the thought that came out of the Nainoa's little talk was something along the lines of, you can't take care of something that you don't understand. And, you know, that goes right down to your own body. You know, you got to take care of yourself first. And then you got to be healthy to be really genuine and take care of others. And so I always, I guess, just relish the moment to connect with Indigenous folks from anywhere, because we know we have generations and generations of ancestral knowledge that is really older than Western history that we are embracing. So I just want to say Gunalchéesh, and that ocean is a powerful thing that I also am looking forward to getting out on that more. It's springtime here. So, you know, a lot of us are watching the weather and watching the waves and getting out when we can. And you never know here if it's going to be blowing 50 or 60 sideways with rain or snow or hail, or if it's going to be 65 and sunny out there. So we're just ready whenever the weather is for us to be out there. So I offer that to each of you, to that, you know, I'm here and ready whenever you need to. So we're looking forward to connecting in person again.
Gunalchéesh, Hawa. I wanted to make sure that we started with what brings us together, and that has been our waters. That has been the rivers that flow in and out from, you know, Alaska into the ocean, from our ocean that connects our lands, because those things are way older than we are, and have been essential in shaping who our people have become because of our waters and our lands, and how our lands created and grew us to be this connected for so long, for thousands of years. It has not just informed who we are, our spiritual essence, and our responsibility to our places, our homelands, but it also has prepared us in many ways to be strong during times of duress or stress. It has been a place that brings us together. So I really just wanted to start with placing something that is so old. As my sister Kate said when she was speaking, this isn't new, N-E-W, it's new, and no, K-N-E-W. And I think that's really important, because that's really about our Indigenous people's ways of knowing and being together. And that's the power of this relationship and this conversation, is that we have so much to tap into. Our people are so brilliant and have for thousands of years figured out how to not just survive, but also thrive. So I just wanted to start us off from someplace very ancient, so that we could have a good, strong foundation for the conversation moving forward as well. As we think about where we are now as a community of Indigenous people across the Pacific, what are you seeing happening in your communities and with your people? What has been just a reaffirmation of that strength? What has been a surprise? Anyone have any thoughts?
I think one of the challenges that we've faced here in Aotearoa is that is this whole thing around power, mostly around dominant power and dominant interests over subordinate power and subordinate interests. And it's been a way that, I don't know, things have been operating in our country for quite a few years actually, where the haves and the have-nots has been a norm, where those who can access opportunity and resources and those that don't access opportunity and resources have been a norm. And so this COVID, in a way, has created a defining opportunity or a defining moment here in Aotearoa to shift the interest from power back to love. And that's in essence the lost opportunity cost of the past to the current opportunity that we have now, is to reset what counts as being important, that power is not the dominant interest, but empowering is the dominant interest. And equally, there's been a real social movement where neighbors have suddenly met each other within their neighborhoods, within the areas that they've lived. But through this process, have built up this collectivism, which I hope and I aspire that would be a motivating value to enable us to shift from power to empowering, from individualism to collectivism, and being more unified in terms of unified through love, really. So that's just some initial thoughts.
Gunalchéesh, Bentham, I love that, like pushing love into that center again. Jeremy.
Kia ora, Vince. Ai tautoko Bentham's kōrero. I guess for me, yeah, a lot of what we've practiced in Te Ao Māori and our people is around the values, and we always recite these values as terms, but in the last 4 weeks, it's been glowing examples of how these values are true through action, and it sort of makes your heart sing and through this time in a way that you feel the floating emotion of being together and supporting each other without any question. And it's brought us close together in many ways, but it's also given us the ability to demonstrate how we can support our people the best we can. And that's building a lot of, I guess, cultural wealth amongst our people, because then, you know, through this and after this, whatever this is, it's going to carry on. So there's the opportunity of capturing that and being grateful for that to move forward together. And when I say together, people that we've worked alongside for years, yet we're now really very, very close through this. We've shared emotion, we've shared worries, we've shared our personal anxieties, and we've shared ourselves. So it's been really good in terms of that. It's a scary time, so we've done our best to support each other, and I think that's the beautiful thing to celebrate, is that those values are coming out in action. That's what the biggest feeling I've got right now.
There's Gunalchéesh, Jeremy. I see Leanne or Craig would like to speak as well.
Oh, kia ora. No, just on that topic of values, one of the interesting things that we've seen here is how those values have come through in a lot of the public and private sector public advertising and social messaging campaigns, and through the composition of waiata and song and music and advertising by different authorities like AT, which is Economic Development Agencies, Tourism New Zealand. So those values are coming through very strongly through those campaigns, and they're wonderful. But to me, the question is, how do we avoid those values being compromised, and how can we see those values in the long term benefiting our communities? I'll give you one example, is in terms of tourism, which is New Zealand's largest export earner. Well, that industry has been decimated, obviously. And last week or the week before, they had a webinar by Tourism New Zealand with 2,400 stakeholders involved, providing feedback, and they sent that feedback out to the wider community, and the image they used was of a hongi, with a young Maori male providing a hongi, a traditional greeting to an overseas visitor, and several other Indigenous Maori whānau supporting that. And the industry here has long been criticized for using Maori cultural imagery and to promote tourism, but at the same time providing lip service, and a lot of the control and power that Bentham talks about lies outside of that Maori community. So in terms of this reset, you know, it is an opportunity to actually really inform the reimagined tourism offering. And I think that logically fits and sits with Māori as tangata whenua. So how, you know, looking ahead, once our economies hopefully open up again, you know, those first flights back in the country, from Alaska or from the States or from Fiji or from wherever, you know, it'd be great to see Indigenous people leading those initiatives and opening up those relationships once again and being in control of the stories that we want to share, rather than just being in a large instance, sightseers and non-participants in that sector. So it comes back to those values which have always been there. Those relationships have always been there. I was fortunate to travel to Alaska in 2004 with our kapahaka group, Ranginui, and we performed at the Celebration Festival and up at Nome at the Midnight Sun Festival, and it was magic. And whilst there, we were given names. I was given a Kipsari name, and I think that name referred to a story about two brothers, two fishermen that were lost. This is going way back. And the Alaskan community thought they were lost, but they actually turned up again many years later. And they told stories of being in the Pacific, and they brought these plants and things back from the Pacific. So those journeys and those connections have been happening for thousands of years. So to me, it's about, you know, yes, there's this reset, but how can our tribal authorities, how can Māori, how can our Indigenous people actually control the parameters and develop those relationships moving forward, so that we avoid what's happened over the last 100, 200 years.
Bye. Should we hand it over to you guys?
Yeah, I think, you know, both of you, you know, well, I guess all three of you in response to that question have really touched on something that is also true in Alaska. And I think that we have also struggled with the same thing, both in terms of being pushed to the side and our culture being co-opted for somebody else's business success, whether that's tourism or even any other kinds of things, arts and crafts markets, teaching, knowledge, all of those things. And we have been at a place of trying to make things reflect more of what we want and not just what we had, because that just was not equitable then, and it's still even more exacerbated now. So for our Alaskans, what are you thinking of in terms of the direction that we know that we need to go? Gunalchéesh?
Yeah, well, it was interesting listening to our Maori fauna. Besides the accents, it could have been anything we would have said. It really connected, right? Right now in this time of pandemic, especially, I feel like, you know, it's odd to feel good about it in some ways, because it's bringing us together in ways that were unexpected and in the good ways. Of course, you know, it's hard because it's putting health at risk and economics at risk. And, you know, sometimes we don't like these economics, especially some of the way that it's done. The tourism seems to happen to us more than us controlling it as much as we'd like. But we know that unfortunately there's a pretty high dependence on it. When Bentham talked about kind of like this subservient, we're dealing with that right now with the state of Alaska as a government. You know, we've really struggled with them over the years to gain recognition, because they don't recognize our sovereignty and our status as such. They always have, because they ask us to waive our sovereignty anytime we do anything with them. So in that way, they always recognize us, but officially they don't. The former administration was on the right path to doing so. And in this administration, the legislature just put a bill forward for formal recognition. But then last week, the governor, in one of his health update mandates, basically said that the tribes were under the state, and we are not. We're not subservient to the state. We are on equal or higher, I think, than they are. So that was a little bit frustrating just because it continues on. But, you know, my response isn't to get into an argument with the governor. I think we need to just state our authority and exercise our authority, and he can be with us or not. That's his decision. The other is kind of this narrative about ourselves. In Alaska, much like in New Zealand, we have tribal governments, and then we have the native corporations, right? And everybody's trying to tell us and decide for us how we communicate and how we work together. And I think that's up to us. That's our narrative to write. So I've decided I'm not going to let others try to write our narrative for us anymore. Instead, we're going to work together, because when we look across the table, we see brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, cousins, you know, we're all related. And we've let other people's narrative divide us. And I think you're seeing a generation of leadership now, both in the corporate and the tribal, where we're just kind of getting to the point where we're saying enough is enough. We'll write this ourselves. And I'm really happy, especially, you know, I get to be sitting in the seat for the Tlingit and Haida tribe, but, you know, our village tribes, our village corporations, we all have to decide for ourselves what this narrative looks like. It's not for me to tell them or vice versa, but we've got to start working together in a way that's going to lift our people. That's the important thing to me, is how do we hold each other up? How do we lift each other up? And incorporating our values into everyday work and life and who we are. And I think we're starting to move that dial in the right direction. And I'm really excited for the leadership that's in place in a lot of places now. I think Joe, as chair of See Alaska, they've been very much trying to change or correct course just as we are. And I think we're seeing more alignment than we've ever seen. And I think that also makes others nervous. And so I think they'll tend to throw more at us as they see us working successfully together. But that's okay, because together we can kind of shield ourselves from that. And those slings and arrows that don't even come from our own people shouldn't matter to us anyways. And for those of our people that sling them, it's okay. We'll get them on board too. When they see that we're lifting up instead of pushing down, we're gonna do so much better. So, Gunalchéesh.
Gunalchéesh. Thank you, Richard. I'll go to Barb, Watlagiraq, and then after her, Kakagu.
You know, I was thinking through this time and the care that we're starting to see, and I think that as we see that care just continue to grow, it's not only a care for our people and our communities, but it's a care for our world, and it's being demonstrated through this reduction in everything that we're doing, and the slowing down of who we are is really starting to see this healing of our world. And I think there's a growing recognition, as far as I can tell, in the media, on social media, this growing recognition of the importance and the care that Indigenous people have had of our lands and our waters from time immemorial. And I think that as we continue to see that growth and that recognition by the outside world, we can start to see the growth and the healing, but the flexing of our sovereignty muscle, flexing of that muscle and demonstrating the importance that for 10,000 years, we understood how to care for this land, care for each other better than any government that has ever tried to come in here. And as we continue to demonstrate that and prove that and as the world continues to see that and recognize that, I think that they are starting to feel the pressure to move towards a center that is more Indigenous based, a center that demonstrates that who we are and the operational way of how we've done things since time immemorial is actually the right way to act in this world and to be in this world in the right way. So that the care is not just for our own person, but the care is for our community, for the world around us, for each other. And I think that the beauty of this time in our self-isolation is this growth in media. And the more we can flex that muscle right now, either through testimony like we're doing right now on this chat, or through writing of policy, you know, this is the time, because things are changing, and things are changing rapidly. And we're starting to see that the Western world, at least here in the United States and in Alaska, folks that aren't us are slipping things under the rug and under the radar of, and this big gloom of COVID on the top of it, and just hiding all this policy underneath there. Well, that's a perfect opportunity for us to sneak things under the radar of COVID-19 too. And it's a great opportunity for us to really focus in on, as Ayyu was saying, how we can be united with each other, and come together and find avenues where we can find those policy fixes that help us to strengthen our sovereignty, but also help strengthen where that root of care for this place is.
How a barb, how a lakida kakagu.
Sheesh. You know, we all have ancient stories, and I'm not going to take the next 30 minutes, and I'm not a storyteller. But so some of these stories, they've got lessons in them and people in them and it's discipline that comes out of a lot of the stories. And it reveals itself, the results reveals itself after, you know, at the end of the story, or even a few days after the story is told. And that's one of my hopes right now for us as people, that we are able to find the discipline and create the healthy space in our own minds to do that, to grow deeper connections in our own minds. The opportunity as we come out of this is it's right now. The moment we need to seize right now to reclaim the education of our young people who are locked up right next to you. You know, these school systems for years have taken our children for full days for years on end, literally, and we've had minimal, if any, control over what's happening. Schools are struggling right now to figure out what's going on, and I'm not trying to diminish any teacher. People who know me I hold up teachers and embrace our teachers the best I can. But the knowledge that we need to embrace right now doesn't come from the last 200 years of colonization. The knowledge we need to embrace right now comes from thousands of years of ancient lessons that we all have within us. Jeremy made a comment about materialism and his daughter, and the battle we have there. And I'm seeing small wins in my little household about that, because we're getting outside every single day. We usually always do, but because they can't connect in other ways, that's our time now. That's family time. And the gadgets, they're connecting us in a healthy way, but we need to be mindful of that. Of your body needs to be healthy just as much as your mind does. The other thought I have is, you know, that there was something before this pandemic that spread the globe, and that was the you know, Western economy. And real quickly, you know, nobody would have predicted this kind of halt on things. And you know what? The earth is still turning just as fast as it was 6 months ago. And a lot of us are still here. And I'm not trying to mitigate the harm that pandemic is causing, but the grow and quarterly profit mentality has been damaging. And when Native people embrace that, there definitely is a segment of great disparity between the haves and have-nots that I'm also not disparaging. That disparity is real. But we need to slow down, and we really do need to come out of this, as Bentham said, and it's this the sovereignty of love just around the world, and that's a different mindset, because a lot of the other anyway in this country, I know you're the leader, the head of your state is doing much better, or doing things more a little differently than ours, and ours most would say gotten to the spot he's gotten to with fear. And fear keeps us in a dark place, and fear does serve its purposes, but this is a moment where I think that is the opportunity for us as Indigenous people. It's to write that knowledge down, record that knowledge, share it with your kids, enact that knowledge, and help the schools. All the schools are struggling right now, and I think we can do it by our kids embracing the love that we're modeling here, and when they go back to the schools, they're able just to lead with love, because they're that much more rooted in who they are and that much more comfortable with who they are. So I said I wasn't going to take 30 minutes.
Gunalchéesh, Quyanaqpak. This conversation is already so rich, and we've covered a lot of ground already. Some of the things that I've been hearing, you know, our people are very familiar with the ways that external forces are often imposed on us. Other people's systems of dominance and power, as I heard our brother Bentham talking about, asserted over us. And, you know, we've mentioned to some degree a little bit about how our people have been armed with someone else's weapons, and we're often taught to point them at each other. And this really is an opportunity to kind of take that breather, to step back and see the bigger picture of who is winning when we are fighting with each other, right? In the craziness of the time, things are also getting really still and becoming so clear. It feels so clear to see the ways that we're pitted against each other. And I'm so heartened by the work that's happening within our communities to pull back that veil and see that the ways that these external forces are making us see each other as if we're the enemy, and really creating space. I'll share a little bit of something that we're doing at First Alaskans, and it has involved Kahukura and Gunalchéesh, and our relatives down in Southeast. It's work that we call Being Good Relatives. And it is a space where we bring our tribes and our regional and village corporations together to make space to have a family conversation about the way that these inherited systems have made it difficult for us to really step into the true power that we can and should have in service to our people and our community. And it has required having some of these really difficult but critical conversations. So I know that these are conversations that are happening all over our native world about ways that we can be good relatives, not only to each other, but also to our lands, as I heard Waikato talking about how our earth is healing itself now, and also being good relatives to both our past and future ancestors, something that centers all of us, all Indigenous people all over the world. The responsibility that we carry to our ancestors throughout all time is something that binds us to each other, to other Indigenous people, and also to our responsibility to contribute. So I'm hearing so many themes of these shared experiences that we have as Indigenous people. I'm also hearing a lot about how our values help to guide us in this time. And it's really complex this time that we're in. You know, we've had an opportunity to spend time with elders over the past several weeks. And, you know, they've told us that the times of isolation that we're experiencing are reminding them of times that they were separated from family, that it reminds them of very painful times. And also that this time of being with each other in our homes, where our parents and children are together and our grandparents and children are together, that it's a treasure, that we're reclaiming time that was taken from our people. And you see so much beauty coming out of that. And so I guess the question that I would pose is, what are some other things that you're seeing happening in our communities where our values are being brought to light, our values are being lived? How are our people rising up in this time?
Jeremy, you want to get some insights on what's happening on the ground there? What have you seen as a first responder, as an essential worker, working with our people on the ground here in Aotearoa?
Right, kia ora whānau. Yeah, so in terms of what's happening is that I guess one is that we've been lucky to have what I call these intrinsic links across the power units that we have, which is the district health boards and the ministries of health and the service providers, because being Māori and staunchly Māori about our positioning, those points have rallied together immediately, and it's enabled, I guess, movement quite rapidly. And the advocacy based on history, you know, Māori suffered terribly the last pandemic, and they're worse off by 2.5 times that of non-Māori, so and a lesser population. But that history, you know, made a very clear statement that we have to be ready in many ways, but that empowerment is important to be able to enable that that action, because we saw it happening swiftly. We know it was about 3 days from the first point of concern from our Prime Minister, to the 4th day being the lockdown, and people in a wave of anxiety, a wave of panic hit, but we're already in a position to be able to work together and communicate with our whānau and bring some comforts. You know, immediate panics around the access to food was the biggest wave of panic, and us being able to deliver food door to door, you know, basically, and hygiene packs were the first point of contact for us, and that that's important with vulnerable families, because the realities of being vulnerable or isolated at the same time is horrendous. So that was an important thing. It gave us purpose to move through those first 2 weeks as well. We're reaching out, and we're reaching out with something useful and tangible, but also build a connection that we can keep that connection to support. So reaching out acts like a net of support, that you bring in the people that need the most support, and the ones that don't at that stage, eventually you're still becoming a presence in the community. So eventually we anticipate there are going to be waves of needs, from unemployment to income issues to access to food to transport, etc., etc. We're anticipating this is going to happen over the next up to December. So that whole whakaaro that we've got, the thought that we carry right now as essential services, is that every dollar counts. So being frugal but being attentive to need is important at the same time. So it's about balancing that right now. We're in the 4th week, and those first 2 weeks went pretty fast in terms of our resources, but we've got what they call a second tranche of funding happening, and that funding's enabler in terms of carrying on that level of support. And when we talk about inequities or inequalities, inequities, the biggest enabler is actually going outside of what's available to the norm, and making that available to vulnerable communities. So yeah, I think that's how it's been for us. And I guess as a manager of an organisation, being connected to other managers, sharing our learning, keeping a part of the pulse, or standing in the flow of the river so you get the information, being a part of every river that you can be, basically, and sharing, but also sharing it with conscientious sharing, being careful that tangi or deaths are affecting us all personally. At this time, it's very hard to grieve and go through the protocols of funerals, and being conscientious of our own staff, looking after ourselves, making sure our team understand that anything that affects them personally can be addressed, and we can support each other first and foremost as well. So that sort of level of collectivism is important right now. Sure.
Quyanaqpak. Leanne?
Kia ora, Jeremy. Yeah, I guess from the community perspective, well, one of my tribes that I mentioned is Waikato, and we have our stakeholders within our tribe of Waikato is about 76,000. And so our iwi, our tribe, have got together all our kaimahi, our workers, to provide the packs for distribution, with a focus primarily on the kaumātua first, our elders first, and then our babies. And so that's within the first couple of weeks. However, we have 68 communities within that stakeholder of 76,000, and I sit on one of our trusts for 2 of those 68 communities. And so therefore, while we're waiting for the tribe to distribute as smaller trusts, we're thinking about, okay, we need to move fast because our people can't wait. And so we've mobilised some of our own together and had our own point station as to where to distribute, and collected our own resources together while waiting, and made our own distribution. We've been fortunate through these Zui to make some rapid decisions regarding our communities, and that's closing down our marae, so that when we have tangihanga, as Jeremy mentioned, it's been very difficult for anybody who has a loved one that has passed through this time. And one of our communities, we did have a death, and we because we're out rural, we thought we had the channels in place, but when emotion takes over, everything just falls to custard. As you'd know, you're supposed to keep your 2.5 metre distance, and like I said, when emotion takes over and you haven't got the processes in place, things just crumble. And so we've had an example. It didn't go to as well as we thought it might in terms of the tangihanga and the burial. So therefore we got together again, and we put out a flow chart of options and socialised it to our own. So in these 2 communities, one of the communities that we're making the decision for, we have about 1,800. And so we socialise the message, giving 3 options if we have a loved one pass during this time of level 4, level 3, and review it constantly. But to give them the options of, cremation and burial and cold storage, pretty much. Okay, so here are some of the considerations if anything was to happen, and here's some of the processes. Here are the contact people. So we have a flow chart, so everyone knows we've socialised it, and then just hoping for the best that nothing happens, but we're ready for our own for when it does. And in the meantime, our community, or our marae, will remain closed until further notice. The great thing about it is we've had our wonderful people that have put their hands up to come in and assist on the ground with the distribution. And so now our smaller communities are working in with our bigger tribe, and so therefore we've put it out there to our whānau and said, okay, rather than now our kaumātua, our elders and the mums with young babies, anybody else that needs help, here's the contact details, send us in, no questions will be asked. Just put your name in and we'll see if we can get the packs out to you, as many as possible. So our smaller communities have done 2, possibly 3 distribution drops now throughout our region. And then on top of that, there's the tribe too. But the reality, as we know, as the trustees, is that, it's not just going to be weeks, it'll be months. And so therefore, what's our plan for at least the next 12 months, 2 years? So we need to be having those discussions and thinking now about what the bigger picture is. How long do we not hongi for, which is the formal greeting, the pressing of the noses, and that physical contact. How long do we go for? So we need to consider all those thoughts, I guess. Yeah. Anything to add?
Obviously, tangihanga or funerals are a major issue in terms of cultural values, and traditionally how tangihanga are dealt with, and under this lockdown environment, it's a totally different scenario. You could almost say that we've gone right to the other end of the continuum, but in a lot of cases, those cultural values have been taken through that process as well, even though there are restrictions in place. One of the interesting things I've noticed is this, the awareness that has risen regarding some of these iwi border checkpoints. That's created, I guess, awareness throughout our broader nation of, the presence and role of iwi, particularly in some of those rural areas. All of a sudden there's these iwi checkpoints and everybody's saying, hey, what's up with this? And that's a good thing, because that's creating awareness of that that relationship, and the fact that these areas are there is an obligation there. The other thing is the environmental impact. I love fishing, and we're hearing stories about how fish are appearing all over the place. The water's clean, the schools of fish are coming right up to the beaches and things like that. And so that's once again, our environment, Tangaroa, giving us a bit of a lesson. If we do leave these things alone, there's great healing power within our natural world. And so I think that, that in itself is a huge educational opportunity. This little minuscule virus has probably done more for the environment than 30 years of UNESCO meetings or whatever, that have been going on. It's just been immediate. And the impacts almost been, in terms of the environment, has been immediate as well. We see that healing coming through. The other thing is self-sufficiency. We, in one generation, we've gone from having our own gardens to being totally dependent on the supermarket, and so the well-being of our environment, whether it's the sea or the ngahere, the bush, on those domains, those are our in the first and supermarkets, and those environments need to be protected, because if that supply chain is hindered, what can we do when we're so dependent on supermarkets? We can go back to our gardens, we can go back to our seas and rivers, and go back to our forests, but those domains need to be vibrant and healthy to sustain us.
Quyanaqpak, Auntie and Uncle, really appreciate that. We'll go to Jessica.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the good, all of the good conversation and just brilliance that you all are sharing. It's just wonderful to listen to. And I felt so connected to so many things that everyone said. In particular, I'm thinking about this recentering of our wellness. As Indigenous people, I think collectively, we have always known that our culture, our languages, our knowledge systems are at the center of our wellness. And this time has really given us the ability to just focus on that spiritual connection with our Creator through the returning of the birds. I live right next to the center of the bird universe right now, Kramer's Field, and all night they're crescendoing and quieting and crescendoing and quieting. And I think that this time has allowed them to help us remember who we are in this world and our connection to them. We've known that, but this is a special time to focus on that. I'm also thinking about the amazing mobilization that's happened during this time. Last week, we had the Federal Subsistence Board, and our Alaskan Native peoples showed up in that space. They testified as to why our ways of life, our ability to harvest our food when we need to, is of the utmost importance. And that special time, even though it was on Zoom and not in person, was so amazing. My partner is from the Brooks Range, and his people have been really working to protect their sacred area, the Red Sheep Creek area. And the proposal to protect that area from non-subsistence users was passed. And so this special time to focus on what's important and recenter us back into our original instructions are really important. I'm also thinking about the first question that was asked about water and connection. My fish camp, which is right behind me on the screen, is way up the Yukon River. I'm about as far away in terms of like distance from a lot of people. But what is so amazing, and I think it's why we feel the connection with each other, is we all need each other, right? The fish that swim up way up the Yukon come from the ocean. And I know that my relatives across the world are taking care of those fish. They're taking care of the waters so that we can all be well. And so when I think of that water, and even though I didn't grow up on the ocean, I know that my relatives across the world, my Indigenous peoples, are taking care of the ocean, which takes care of my river, which takes care of our salmon, our river, our ocean. I was also thinking about just the recentering of our culture and how that shows up. Each week here in the interior, we've had some of our Native brothers, Travis Cole, Sonny Luke, and Norman Carlo, offer a Zoom. Last week it was offered on Zoom where you could call in and sing a song in our language. And they've also done Facebook Live. But my little girl has just loved that time. And then I've seen other people post pictures of their children enjoying that time. So just thinking about how this time period, though difficult, has really given us an opportunity to practice our culture. I've seen people sharing how much fun they're having learning their languages. So I would just say that it's a time we'll never get back. And so what are we going to do with it? I'm thinking of what Ayyu said is, how are we going to leave this for our future ancestors this time? You know, and that's a real intentional question and thought you put into some critical thinking. And then I'll just close by saying that I'm seeing a lot of beautiful things happen during this time. The other night, we started our sauna for our neighbor who happens to be an elder, and she just came through the back and went and took a sauna. And she came over and gave us some homemade bread just to say thank you. And that love is so important, the love that we share with each other, even if we can't physically touch each other, to keep our connection strong, to keep our languages strong, to keep our ceremony strong. And so I love that idea of recentering ourselves with love at the center as well. So thank you.
Masicho, sister. Beautiful reminders. Chatya Ish.
Sheesh. It's funny, this topic, as we are doing this meeting, I'm on the side on my phone facilitating people getting shrimp sent from my home island. So our food sovereignty is paramount to who we are, right? What Jess said really touched my heart, because in this time of people panicking and being fearful and even angry, you're seeing more of that love. And for us Tlingits and Haidas, we always express our love through the sharing of our foods. It's good to be the president. I just go on Facebook and say I'm really feeling hungry for homemade bread, and it shows up on my porch. So, but you know, in the last few weeks, we've seen neighborhoods kind of coming alive with fish boxes for herring eggs, and people acknowledging this physical distancing, but still practicing who we are in the caring for one another, lifting each other up through providing. When I grew up in my village in Kisan, just like probably every village, you know, when you went hunting or fishing, that first catch, that first hunt, it was always for our elders or for somebody else who needed it more than you did. And even now we're seeing that, right? People are getting their foods and they're making sure others get that. One of my frustrations, though, is in Alaska, our game and our fish are managed by the state and the feds. We have a small voice there, but you know, we're just trying to right now let the state know that during this pandemic, we should be able to hunt out of season, be able to put food on the tables of people that need it. And I always argue anyways that they don't know how to manage our resources. Even their arbitrary seasons they put forward, our people didn't hunt during those times. And we had reasons not to. And now you're mandated to hunt in these windows, and it doesn't fit our people. And we should, you know, the reality is our people will go out and get what they need when they need it. From the tribal government standpoint, I'm a part of a group that just wants to make sure that they're not criminalized for being Tlingit or being Haida or being Athabaskan, or, you know, and on and on. This is who we are. This food sovereignty is at the core of who we are. It's our love language to each other. It's how we care for one another. And for somebody else to mandate it and to regulate it, it's really hurtful to us. And, you know, I've even growing up and not just growing up, being an adult man and having gone out and fished and having the troopers stop you. I can tell you, anybody who's close to me has always heard of Carter Bay. It's kind of my religious place. It's where I know who I am. It's our traditional fishing grounds for Kisan, my village. And I remember being there, and I don't know where I got it, maybe my parents, but I was just a rebel. The Fish and Game landed in their little airplane, and they just expected we would come over to them, and we just ignored them until the point the pilot got out on his pontoon and yelled at us, "Aren't you guys going to come over here?" Nope. You come to us. You know, you're here intruding on what we're doing. I get a little just impassioned about that, though, because, you know, we've managed these resources for tens of thousands of years to being not just healthy, but abundant. And it's scary to me that it's going to take a pandemic to see kind of Mother Nature and our resources get a reprieve and bounce back a little bit, right? I don't want to see that. I don't want it to have to come to that. But we've pushed it to that. You know, it's not lost on me that it's like the first time in years they've been able to get clear, like, satellite photos of some of these metropolitan areas. You can be in LA right now and see clearly for the first time in decades. And it shouldn't come to that. We know this is a man-made issue. We know that we are part of the problem. We know we can be the solution. And, you know, the tribe food sovereignty is becoming paramount to what we're thinking. And we've just got a few grants that we're going to start building greenhouses. We think we need to start growing our own food again. And I forgive me, Leanne's husband said it, you know, we've gone away from being hunters and fishers to we hunt and fish in the aisles of Costco and Safeway and our grocery stores, and that's just not who we are. So we need to become more self-reliant again. We need to embrace growing and cultivating our own food sources. And I honestly believe one day I hope that the corporations and tribes come together and develop a co-management plan for our fish streams and our hunting resources that are and controlled by our Alaska Native corporations. We don't need outsiders to tell us how to do it. We should do it for ourselves. We are the answer. Collectively, we have 10,000 plus years of knowledge, collective knowledge. We know how to do it. It's in our DNA. And frankly, for somebody to come from outside and tell us how to run our streams, how to care for steelhead and salmon and on is really kind of offensive to your senses, right? And then, it's funny because the state and feds use a number that says that subsistence users use about 1% to 2% of any given resources. Yet whenever those resources are on decline, it's us that they turn to and say, you need to stop fishing, and we have rights. We're supposed to supersede everything else, but it's always our fault. Every person, and not just the natives and non-natives here who also subsist, who use our traditional resources, collectively, we couldn't gather in a day or in a season, what one commercial vessel can do in a day. And I'm not against our commercial vessels. I am against the trawl fleet that's out in the oceans. I think they're destroying our oceans. But anyways, I like Joe, I said, it won't be 30 minutes, but you give a clink at a microphone and there you go.
Brother. So you're saying if we all go to Facebook and post, gee, I really wish I had fresh shrimp, we'll all get it on our doorstep?
I don't know, it works for me.
You said you're distributing it. Lagunai?
I just want to recognize first before I shift into the next question. It looks like Jeremy has his mic off. Did you want to add something before I shift, Jeremy?
Yeah, just want to tautoko, Richard, your kōrero there. This for us, and Craig too highlighted at the start. For us, officially tomorrow we are nationally allowed to start diving as of 12:05 a.m. tonight. And for if you want to catch up any Māori in the Motu, go down to the beach, and you'll see a wave. I'm trying to work out a way to warn all the seafood and the fish and the paua that there's going to be a wave of Māori coming into the sea tomorrow. That we're anecdotally calling the Māori tide, Ahea Popo. So so there's it's been a month, but it felt like a year away, being disconnected. I think people are just going to get into the sea and enjoy that environment. Hopefully not get too greedy and pillage the whole stocks, but it's definitely something we've missed, and there's going to be a whole lot of Māori down there tomorrow. So it's going to be hard, guys, including myself. Even though the weather's looking pretty terrible, that might dissuade about 10% at least. So but total, it's a good kōrero that joins us. And when we talk about rugby was invented to distract us from diving and hunting, but that's one of our main sports, and we can't connect through that discussion, that kōrero of hunting and diving. And as soon as you connect to your peers or your colleagues, the more you go into it and the more depth you describe that experience of spearing a fish, or that fish saying hello, or the paua escaping your grasp or whatever. And paua's a Blackfoot abalone in New Zealand. It's one of our gold, so to speak. So it's definitely a good discussion to join together around anyway. So acknowledging that kōrero. Thank you.
Gunalchéesh. I think you made some really, all of you have been making such incredible points, and I'm just trying to write as many notes as I can to capture it. I'm so glad that we get to do this and be with one another, and that we are live streaming it to Facebook. So there's going to be a record of all of these amazing things that you are all sharing. I wanted to kind of pick up on the thread about our ways of life and what it actually means, what it has always meant. And if we put it at the center again of where we're going, what it could mean. And I wanted to start by reading a quote from an Alaska Native educator, a professor at a university. And he said, "We have lived in places with such efficiency and grace that later people who came to our homelands have considered them to be empty of human beings. And they've called this a wilderness because they didn't see us in those places. They couldn't imagine that a people could live so well in a land that it would appear untouched by them. And we live with that dilemma of that to this day." And that was by Iñupiaq. And he shared that in remarks he was making at the Alaska Native Education Summit back in November of 2001. And as we were talking, you know, oftentimes when people think about economy, they think about it in a Western context as if an economy was just suddenly created a couple hundred years ago here in Alaska, or for you in Aotearoa, upon contact, when in fact it is something that was centrifugal to who we are. But our economy was based on the spiritual essence and connection to our homelands, and a responsibility to our homelands, to our animal relatives, and to one another, in a way that that economy was created to be sustainable, yes, but it was created as a responsibility of changing our behavior, not the behavior of the lands and the animals, but on human behavior, and centering the focus of our management on ourselves, the walking the talk, the exhibiting and operationalizing our values. And if we put that at the center of an economy in this moment, how could we actually get there? What would that look like to us? And to riff off of what Paul said, our stewardship was so amazing that it looked untouched to others. You know, that we only take what we need. What if that was the economic principle that everything else is created off of? What if we put the love for our children and our elders at the center of our economy, and then everything else, all the other decisions around it, would have to be made with that as the anchor or the vision? So I just want to put that out there on our virtual coffee table here and see if anyone has any thoughts to share about that.
I'll briefly, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Good, Jess.
Okay, I'll just briefly share. This is a question that I often ask my students in many of my classes that I teach, because most of my students are, if they don't live in rural Alaska, they're from the village. And so they put so much thought into this. And the answers that they come up with wouldn't surprise any of you. The economy that they imagine is one where people are speaking their languages, people are out on the land more, people are connected, they're able to go hunt for their elders when their elders need their native food. I often think of our traditional chief, Reverend Tremble Gilbert. He said, if you want to keep well, you have to eat your native food at least once a day. And so what if we could make sure our elders were eating, or everyone was eating their native food at least once a day? That comes back to governance, right? And we know how to govern so that our relatives, our animal, our water, they stay strong and sustainable. My students talk about our languages as being so central, and so creating the space to learn and grow into our languages, supporting our local hunters. Almost, I think about so many of the men I know in my life from my village, but all over Alaska specifically. And when they work, they usually are working so that they can go be out on the land when they're not working for money, is what I mean. So that they can buy their snow machines, they can buy their fish nets. And so what if we were to, again, recenter our economy so that they didn't have to give up one part of themselves in order to, I guess we can make it more streamlined or something where they didn't have to go away for 2 weeks to work, to come back, to buy a snow machine, to get out on the land. But maybe we could hire our hunters to help us feed our elders. So we put a lot of thought into it collectively in my classes, and it all comes back to recentering our culture as the primary economy in our lives. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Gunalchéesh. Thank you, Jess. The put on, I guess, my See Alaska hat and just a couple highlights. I think, the state of Alaska has been in crisis for the last 4 or 5 years. The budgets have been going one direction as far as the gap and not closing the gap and living on the earnings for too long, and the savings is gone now. And we all know where that budget, where those earnings came from. It's oil revenue, and we're sitting on $65 billion. And where you've got money, you got fights. So you got people fighting over how to use that. And look at the price of oil now. And these budgets were built on, probably $70 more than what it is right now. And when we don't have a savings. So it's been some years of crisis, and in Southeast here, the crisis, the food security, the food sovereignty. I'm all there, and I can go on many stories about the village and going and doing what we do. But food security was a real crisis before this came through Alaska. This current one, our ferries have been shut down, and then that's our highway to the food. Sure, it's coming from other places, but our stores, they had empty shelves prior to this hunker down order. And that's because the state ferry system hasn't been maintained well, it's been underfunded. Every level, it's just been cut for the last 4 or 5 years across the state. Last 4 or 5 years at Sea Alaska, a stark contrast. And it's been historical net profit and revenue growth. And it was some years ago, we restructured the company with one overarching principle, that whatever we get into, it needs to be meaningful to our people, so they want to come and be the best at doing what we're doing. And it's got to resonate, and we've got to have an affinity for that business. So we ended up getting into seafoods, and we've got seafood, getting food on the table is an essential business right now. So they didn't get shut down. Sure, they've got to be extra precautions to protect themselves, but those businesses are still operating. Other thing that we did was we put half of our timber resource, which is not much. We only retained a tiny percentage of our native forests in fee ownership, and we put half of it into the carbon market in California. And that's allowed us some freedom to do the things we're doing today and to continue growing. In November, we established a $10 million fund to help revitalize our native languages. $10 million fund, and that hasn't made a lot of news. That would make news some places for big companies to put in $10 million into something, but it's just part of who we are and what we need to do. It's the right thing to do. But I come back around to a little bit of the economics of that. That $10 million is still going to be there 10 years from now, because what we're actually doing is spending the earnings off that for the next 10 years. And so it's going to be about $500,000 spend every year, which is still significant, but in the bigger scheme, it's modest. There's a lot of organizations doing good work. We're very excited about partnering with our tribes, especially Tlingit and Haida, on implementing so many of our programs. Before the hunker down happened, our boards pushed a meeting up quickly to push our spring distribution up. And we've got 22,000 shareholders any distribution we make, it's going to be a big dollar, but it gets spread quite a ways. So it costs a lot to make a distribution. Well, we distributed $23 million to shareholders March 31st. And we pushed that distribution up to get it out there earlier. And we also set up $1 million relief fund to put dollars in the food bank, to put dollars in the place that are dealing with the most vulnerable, dealing with front lines, who are usually stretched anyway with so many of our people. So we didn't hesitate. Plenty more to go on there, but I guess my thought or hope is that this this moment helps. Excuse me. Not enough coffee. Our elected leaders to come out of this hunker down with a more broader, deeper sense of urgency to do what's right for everybody, right for the people, not what happens to be right for them in the moment. So as Native organizations, we are always very close to the most vulnerable because we are the most vulnerable. And I think there's opportunity, huge opportunity for us to have more of these Zooms and to broaden the circle and to help open eyes and then to, I hope to dive in my life and not too far from now to participate in that Maori wave that's going to happen real quick here in the oceans over there, because we are ocean people. So I'm going to put that on my bucket list.
Gunalchéesh, Hakagu, Chafliaish.
I was just snacking on some traditional M&Ms. Yeah, it was interesting to me. You talk about moving into an indigenous economy. And, for those that know me, know that economic development's kind of always been my passion. And when I ran for President Tlingit Haida, one of the platforms I ran on was the idea of economic sovereignty. Some don't like this when I say it, but we're only as sovereign as we can afford to be. And so I really believe we needed to be out kind of making our own money to match the federal money we get so that we can be sustainable, so that we can be more determined in deciding who we serve and where we serve and how we serve our people. Tlingit and Haida has nearly 32,000 tribal citizens worldwide, and yet predominantly we're only able to serve the ones in what we call our service area, which can feel pretty disingenuous when you're not any less Tlingit or Haida wherever you live. And so we've been moving towards that model. And I've been asked this several times, and I think I even spoke about it in Jess's class, the idea of economic sovereignty. And well, isn't economic development kind of the antithesis of tribal values? And where did that tribes didn't really practice that? And I argue that very strongly. I contend that it was our people that created commerce. Where our villages were, where we moved to, our patterns were all based on our own version of commerce, or that was the fish and hunting and being able to trade and barter with our friends and neighbors, north, south, east, west, and across the highway of the Pacific Ocean. And that was commerce. And so I contend commerce is what brings us together. And I think commerce, when indigenized, when we, just like anything and everything we do, when we incorporate our values into it, it's a sustainable, holistic system that will last for many, many more generations beyond, our children and great-grandchildren. And I think when we all embrace that, I think we'll see true success for our people. And I think right now I feel really connected to Joe. I feel like we're kind of two sides of the same coin, because I think we share that value. Not, you know, and I think people want to kind of make it, oh, you're just corporate or you're about the money. Not at all. It's about, again, incorporating our values into how we do business. And you can say anything about that and be critical. But I also say, if you're going to be critical, make it constructive criticism and help us succeed. Help us, if you think we're going down the wrong path, help us change to the right path, be a part of the solution. It's real easy to sit back and be critical, but you really need to engage if you want to be that change. And this may sound bad. I'm really thankful to be the leader of this tribe during this pandemic. And that's because I know that I'm a part of this solution. I'm not saying it in some arrogant way that I'm the solution, not at all. But I can't imagine sitting on the sidelines in a time like this, when we have the opportunity to move that dial in the right direction for our people. I feel that calling. I feel I have to stand up and be a voice in that. And I think what's really exciting is a lot of our leaders feel that way right now. I've seen the, you know, criticism. I've seen far more praise for Sea Alaska for stepping up and saying, hey, we're going to be a part of the solution. We're going to move the dial in the right direction. And I'll say it here and very publicly, Gunalchéesh to their leadership and their wisdom for doing that. We have to be a part of the solution right now. We can't stand on the sidelines thinking everything's going to get better. Guess what, folks? If we do that, it's going to be our people who, look, we're the most vulnerable to this virus. Whether it be, you know, through, I don't think it's through fault of our own, but I also take accountability. We need to get healthier. It's a personal goal for myself, and it's something I believe in. But, you know, our people have the highest levels of diabetes, high blood pressure, you know, heart disease. I have problems with my immune system. You know, we're all susceptible, so we need to be a part of the answer and that solution and protecting ourselves. Our tribe established an emergency operations center, and we just spent almost $1 million purchasing masks, ventilators, test kits that we're going to be sending out. You know, now that I've said this publicly, everybody's going to want them tomorrow. Unfortunately, we have a worldwide shortage, so we're working on getting these items in, but we're going to get them out to our communities. And guess what? We're going to, you know, Sea Alaska is a part of that solution. Our village tribes are going to be a part of that solution. Our village corporations are going to be a part of that solution. Don't sit on the sidelines and be a part of just complaining. Jump in and be a part of that solution. If you don't like what's happening, be a part of that solution. I might have went off a little bit off of Indigenous economics, but this is why we do what we do, and this is why we're trying to make money so that we can continue to do the things we need to do.
Gunalchéesh, I think that you know, the concept of sovereignty and inherent sovereignty, and the fact that we were born with it, and it has the strength of our ancestors. But what I hear you saying is we've got to exercise that muscle. And part of the exercising of that muscle requires that we think innovatively and kind of ingeniously, as our ancestors always did, to exercise in a way that aligns with our values. So it reflects those things instead of reflecting things that we don't want to be at the center of who we are or what our children can expect for the future. Jeremy, did you have anything to contribute?
Kia ora. Yeah, just briefly, you know, when economics wasn't my number one subject, and you know, I did relatively okay at school, and I didn't know what, you know, it took me years to think about why I wasn't part of that dialogue, and mainly because it's so foreign. You know, the concept of managing a limited supply to meet endless demand as a common concept, but it's still, the terminology of economics is quite foreign, I think, to Māori as well. So you know, that politics 101 statement, if you control the agenda, you control the discourse. So the importance of having Māori language and Māori concepts in that in the language of that discourse is first and foremost the biggest challenge for us, but we've done that really well. Our economy is around reacquisition of land, using the environment as our economy, as we always traditionally done, as all Indigenous peoples do. And I think iwi has led that agenda. Been probably 30 years, in the last 30 years, there's a lot of change around iwi or tribal influence on the economy. And I guess the only last thing I think for us as a learning, for me as a learning, is that as a collective people, what makes sense to the individual generally makes sense to the collective. And those 3 points are connected at an individual level, being the mind, being able to rationalize this and make sense, the heart, being able to have passion and love for this, and for the stomach, with that dual function of being able to meet the needs of native kai, but also the instinctual feeling from the stomach. So those 3 points of contact, if they all align, we are passionate about as a people. So the economy is the same. It all has to connect with us at those 3 points. And when we do something, we do it really well. And so that's the challenge we've sort of been learning over time, but trying to influence that agenda and doing it with strength is important. And equally in this time as well, we're right on that forefront around the language of change. And it's all inclusive. So that's just my whakaaro around that. So kōrero just wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Wafagirak?
As we're talking about this subject, it's kind of fortuitous because through First Alaskans, we're working on a giant report right now to demonstrate the economic and cultural footprint of Alaska Natives in Alaska, because it's really something that we haven't had holistically to kind of compute all of the contributions our culture has made, all of the contributions economically we've made as a people to the state of Alaska and to our nation. But when we're thinking about contributions and we're thinking about this economy, a lot of people don't recognize, or maybe they do recognize but refuse to acknowledge it in public, the contributions that our people have made to this state and have made to our nation in the way of forceful removal of our lands, the oil that has been extracted, the timber that has been cut down, the minerals that have been harvested, the fish and game that continues to be harvested are all a result of 10,000 plus years of us taking good care of this land and of us taking good care of this ocean, to the point where you cannot even see our footprints when other people came in here to, when outsiders first came to Alaska. That's a contribution, and it's a contribution that is never recognized by outsiders, by Westerners who've made Alaska their home. And when we're thinking about the shift in economy and the shift, there's more than just resources, right? There's contributions, there's human dynamic and person that all of us have contributed over the years. There's this advancement in all of our Indigenous technologies that we have contributed to not only the state, but to the world. The kayaks, you're welcome. There's all these beautiful things that our people have contributed, and so many of them are just, people would be blown away at the contributions that have been based and rooted in Indigenous economies. Have you guys seen that one meme that talks about how I think it's like over 80% of the world's resources exist on Indigenous land? The diversity of the world's resources exist on Indigenous land that is being held currently, and I think we're at 1% of the world's land that is still maintained by Indigenous people, and 80% of that diversity resides in the land that we currently and still care for. I think about this contribution in the fact that for 10,000 plus years, our ancestors had resided in one place, you know, and since time immemorial in accordance with our history, but you know, those carbon dated social scientists, they really like those carbon dates, right? And we have 10 to 15,000 years of carbon dated proof of existence in one place, you know, and that one place, the resources that sustained us, the saber-toothed salmon, and the salmon that it has adapted to today that we still depend on as a society. For 10,000 plus years, we relied on that. We cared for the environment and we cared for that resource in such a way that you could not tell that our impact was there. And in less than 200 years of contact here in Alaska, and in less than 200 years of contact by the outside world and their management systems that have come into play, we have seen our resources almost go extinct. We have seen our inability to hunt and fish those same resources that our ancestors depended on since time immemorial. And it just goes to demonstrate the cultural, the impact that we've had on this economy, how we contributed to the world that everyone is calling home now. And I think there's a lot to be said in a return to an Indigenous style and an Indigenous manner of managing or caretaking of the land and resources around us.
Gunalchéesh, everyone, for your thoughts about what an Indigenous economy could be again. It exists still, but is largely invisibilized, and it certainly has not been placed at the center of the larger world agenda, which I think is where we are now at this time. We have been saying for so long that what is good for our Indigenous people is good for the world. And this is a message that we heard in Aotearoa when we were there. This is a message that we've heard with all of our brothers and sisters, Indigenous brothers and sisters across the world. Something that we say here in Alaska as well. And there is no time like the present than to figure out how to maximize the blessing of Indigenous wisdom at a time when each of our places desperately need it. They've needed it for a long time. And whenever there's something like this, a pandemic, an earthquake, something that causes people to have to go back in to really understanding what is most important to living and to loving. It is our Native peoples that have been the first to respond. And we have different mechanisms now, our tribal governments, our corporations, our tribal health system, our foundations and our trusts. We have all of these different mechanisms. And if we can put them to use through aligned strategies and unleash that power, the world will benefit from it. And we need it more now than ever. And I just really want to say, Gunalchéesh, to each of you so much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom. It's unbelievable to me that we are only 2 hours into this conversation, and I just want to keep going. So I want to kick it over to Ayyu for her to share some of her thoughts and help us close out our time together.
Gunalchéesh. So much of what our conversation has been in this 2 hours that has gone by, quick as a blink, has really just been so grounded in the deep love and responsibility that we all feel to our people, to our communities, our lands, and our waters. And I feel so thankful for the time that we've gotten to spend in this space of love. I was really reminded of something that one of my Iñupiaq elders shared with me recently when he was talking about this time of sacrifice that we're in right now. And he said, sacrificing the time right now with your family will protect your family and our communities for generations. And in that, he was also saying, just fix your mind to the time on the other side of this. Can you just imagine what a beautiful reunion it will be when we're on the other side? And so for me, I've just been really sitting in a place of gratitude and just deep thankfulness to be connected to and learning from all of you, and really looking forward to that time of reunion in person, where we can give each other those big hugs and sniff each other's cheeks. But we wanted to open it up if anyone wanted to offer a brief closing, and then I see someone with a guitar. Yay! Yay! So we wanted to open it up if anyone would like to offer any closing comments.
I've been waiting 2 hours for this moment with Bentham here. That's my closing. It's just Gunalchéesh, and then to the world here, it's we love you. We're just sending love. That's what this is all about. So thank you for my first Alaskan sisters for continuing to just be the champions you are and connecting us.
I would just like to say Masicho and Nadi Thun, I love you all too. And we love you, everyone watching, and your families and communities. We wish you good health and wellness. And I would just like to say that wellness is a continual journey and healing, and also learning. So, you know, take this time to do what you've always wanted to do. You know, go out to nature, to the birds, the animals, thank them for continuing to take care of us and take care of each other. Be well.
I just want to thank everybody again for this opportunity for us to come together. It's did truly, as Ayyu said, go by in a blink of an eye. Even for those of you who I don't know personally, I know that we know each other, and that gives me great comfort that we could come together and share. And we can't have our visit to see you all this year, but it'll happen, and Creator will show us when. And I look forward to seeing you all and giving you great big hugs, hugging my brother again. So Gunalchéesh, how.
Kia ora tātou. Just like to endorse that and say thank you again for this place and space to share. There's one saying, he aha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing? It is people, it is people, it is people. So kia kaha tātou, be strong, be safe, be well, and we look forward to meeting you. If not on the Zooey, then when it's time to give you a hongi and a hug. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou, just mihi aroha ki a koutou. Yeah, it's an honour and a privilege to be a part of this kōrero e tēnei ata, tēnei rangi. So, you know, just really humbled to meet and to share with some amazing people across the globe. It's one of the first times I've actually had a group session with Alaskan people, and I've really cherished today. My daughter was listening in the background, and as soon as we started talking about economics, she just disappeared. So there are some commonalities there, but yeah, and it's great to meet you all, and I will treasure that. We're connected now, so if there's anything we can share, more than happy to do so from our whakaaro and our perspective. So yeah, thank you. Kia ora.
I just wanted to say,
Kia ora,
Aoyan-san, you are very precious to me.
Kia ora, everybody. We'll go next because we'll have to hand it back to our hosts to finish off. But we'll finish up with a waiata from our side. Just want to tautoko what Leanne and Jeremy have shared. It's been a special couple of hours. And the song we're going to share is written by Hiine Melbourne. And it just talks about just letting the rain and the wind wash away the things that are worrying us, and that our spirits will be connected, you know, across the wind and through space. And that we have so much to look forward to in our futures. So off we go. Pukenga e te ha horoia e te ua whiti whitia e te rā
Absolutely.
Tēnā koutou. Phyllis.
And do you want to offer a closing comment too?
We couldn't hear you, sorry.
Did you want to offer some closing comments too?
Oh, just no, just to say thank you very, very much. What a blessing. And that we just want to pray for all of our Indigenous peoples across the world and non-Indigenous peoples across the world, that they be blessed through Indigenous values and that they be enlightened through this process to serve better, to love better, and to be better people, especially for those less fortunate than ourselves at this particular time. So from all the way here at the bottom of the earth here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we send our love from all of us, Māori and non-Māori here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to our Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples across the world, that you all be blessed once, twice, three times in our language, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Itusichan, as Kakagu said earlier and showed us the sign. Thank you all so much. Love you so much. These relationships that we have the honor and the responsibility of stewarding for the next 10,000 years requires that no matter what happens, that we remain family, we remain connected, and we can work through all these challenges together. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for spending time with us. I can't tell you how much this has meant to me today. and has filled me up until the next time we can have, what do you say, korero together and a zui, and spend more time learning from others. You know, this is just the first. And we're going to be working to connect more of our brothers and sisters across the ocean for more opportunities like this. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to hand it over to Ayyu to close us out. Gunalchéesh hawa.
Gunalchéesh hawa. Just in that same vein, I'll offer to you a teaching from one of our Ahtna elders that was recently shared with me. For this time specifically, he was reminding us that even when we feel alone, to remember that our people have always known trails. And even when those trails are made up of individual steps, they meet up with other trails and other people at different times. And that in this time right now, this digital time, that we make an effort to meet each other on the digital trail. And so just want to say Kuyanaqpak, so much love and gratitude to all of you for all that you have done and all that you'll continue to do to help our Indigenous people to be stronger all over. So just want to say love you, and we'll see you on the digital trail next time. Bye. We love you.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Whānau. Mwah.
Awesome King Sam.
Be well. We love you.
Aston King San,
Ora.
Dang Di Koyadang.
Tangdi Koryadang, House King Sam. Be greatly.